Hello, Chattanooga.
Here we are once again
With Footnotes. It's so good to see you all here today. I'm just kidding. I can't see you. Can you see them, Vandy?
You know what? We can see them in spirit.
Oh, getting spiritual.
We feel that right now.
It was the guitar. He was getting all spiritual because of the guitar.
I was. Next time I'm going to start my air guitar to go along with it.
Oh, yeah. Hey, guys.
What was it we were singing? Can't even walk without you holding my hand. We can go into that a little bit.
That was not the same beat. That was a totally different song. Hey, guys. I'm so glad you've joined us today for Footnotes. Today we're talking about, what are we talking about, Vandy?
Well, we're going to be talking about Pastor's message from Sunday called Revival.
Revival.
But before we do, we want to just remind everybody, Footnotes is ministry of CAC, Cornerstone Apostolic Church in Chattanooga. Find us online at cachattanooga.org. If you didn't get a chance to watch Sunday's message and listen to that, we encourage you to take some time, go do that so that you have some reference points to what we're talking about here.
Just note on the recording, when the service first starts, we had the click track, it come through, and so it counts out 1, 2, 3. 4. That was a mistake. We fixed it right after that. So just note that it was not on purpose.
It's actually we got that in our ears, and they do it so that everybody in the church can clap on beat.
Oh,
yeah. So that
we need to turn it
those
up.
Unique songs. Yeah, we want to make sure everybody's clapping on the right beat. So.
Yeah, no, that's for the drummer if you're not a musician.
But yeah, so Pastor Sloan preached Sunday, on revival. And it's I enjoy messages like that significantly just because it takes me back to my own childhood and my own experience. Yeah, like last few weeks of church, man, we've been going back on different things, different songs, all that kind of stuff. Like, y'all missed it if you hadn't tuned in on Wednesday night. I know this is about Sundays, but you need to tune in to last Wednesday night and listen to Brother Sam getting us going on these old songs.
I didn't sing it.
I was proud of, Pastor mentioned it Sunday, and I am too, man. I was proud of, our music director, Duran, just picked it up.
We're just digging into it.
Yeah, man.
That's what we're doing.
Love
IBC grads, they don't know old music. All right. Anyway,
so Revival. Glory. Yeah. So
he spent some time in Acts.
Yeah, he did. And he got to this point, like after his initial opening, and he said something Sunday that kind of stuck out with me. He mentioned that today's question in today's society, we're of course in an election season, election year, and so there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of conflict, and everything you turn around, everything you look at, everything you open up, social medias, news, etc. It always seems like everyone is trying to answer the question, where do we find God?
Yeah.
And that question really, really stuck out to me and resonated with me, because it's such a significant question. And if you look at society, if you look at our own lives, if you look at every step that we take, it's so relevant. Yeah. And you look at every aspect of things, it's like, the world is truly trying to find the answer to the question, where do we find God? Is it on social media? Is it in Hollywood?
It's definitely an AI.
Yeah, AI. There it is,
That's sarcasm for anyone that doesn't know what sarcasm is.
You can have great debates with AI, but anyway, we're not going to fall down that trap. But Pastor did spend a lot of time in Acts chapter 17. Mm-hmm. He read a passage there talking about Paul coming and addressing the unknown God in Athens.
Yeah.
But he also, it's important, I think, to take just a step back and look in Acts, the early part of Acts chapter 17, because there was a lot of things happening in that chapter.
Greeks. The Greeks, I love the Greeks. They loved ideas. They didn't really care about the concrete. They loved the idea, the philosophy. They would sit. They had a hill just dedicated to coming arguing. Yeah. And they developed this and honed that craft of philosophy. It was beautiful. And probably a little bit frustrating.
Well, and they created the things called salons, which we know of as places to get your hair did.
Yeah, well, that's where gossip happens.
Yeah, well, but they were called salons because they would get together and discuss ideas.
Oh,
that's why they created that. And so,
I think ours just discuss people.
Yeah, it quickly dived, dive bombed there. But I found it really interesting when we look at what happened in Acts 17. Mm-hmm. He begins to interact with the Greeks. on a whole new level. Paul does. And it starts because the Jews had lost their faith. The Jews didn't believe.
Yeah.
And so in Acts 17, some of the Jews got so upset with Paul, those in Thessalonica actually, that in 17:6, their accusation against Paul before the leaders of their community was this, quite simply: those that have turned the world upside down are come here.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, hey, look, revival's happening here, and they've already done it everywhere else, so now they're coming here, and so they get all upset about it.
That was not them. But those that have turned the world upside down.
Yeah, those that have turned the world upside down. And that was their accusation for revival that was starting to break out. And one thing that Acts 17 can teach us is that, even before we get to the part where Pastor read, where Paul's declaring and speaking about the unknown God, one thing that we can learn that Acts 17 teaches is that revival will always be met with resistance.
Yeah.
Always. And that resistance is sometimes human in nature.
Yeah.
Sometimes spiritual. Sometimes it's met with resistance by the very people that need it the most.
It pulls out a lot of new things. Anytime there's a new convert, you think, well, let's just say someone's converted at 35, right? They have to go back and relearn, they become a new creature in the way they do things, but then there's habits that then have to be relearned. Hey, actually, no, I don't do that anymore. And like that whole world turning upside down, that becomes singular. God's turned my world upside down for the better, but then I have to relearn. And then there's frustrations because there's generational things I don't even want to get spiritual with that, but just habits of lifestyle. Oh, wait a minute. Would Jesus, I don't know, that question, WWJD, that becomes a life-changing question.
I mean, it's funny when you watch somebody that has had an encounter with God and they've begun to answer, where do I find God? And they have this revival experience, a personal revival experience. It's funny, like, to interact, and not just funny, and like it's funny in an awesome way.
Yeah.
That you'll watch them and you'll interact with them, and they will say things, and then you see their face change. Like, oh no, I don't say that anymore. I can't say that anymore. I can't talk like that anymore. So yeah, exactly what you're saying with the turning the world upside down as well. Like, and it's kind of, interesting because that's what happened in verse 7 or verse 13 of 17 is that they went to a new spot. They were kind of kicked out of that area, out of Thessalonica, and they went to a community called Berea. And Berea, the Bible says they received it. They received the word. There was an amazing outpouring of the presence of God there. And the people from Thessalonica didn't like it so much that they went to that town and stirred up the people against them. And so Paul and Silas and Timothy, they had to evacuate the area again. And so, it just gets to the point where Paul finally gets to the point where he's hanging out in Athens and his spirit is stirred.
Yeah.
And that kind of what leads us to where Pastor picked up, where, Paul was taken because he was preaching Jesus, and then he's asked to speak in front of all these people, and he notices this unknown God in their place where all the Greek gods hung out. There's 12 major Greek gods, okay, and a little g, of course. 12 major Greek gods, but even they themselves knew something was missing, because even though they had all these gods to cover all these different aspects, they realized there was something bigger, something more powerful than what they had.
Just in case.
Yeah, just in case. We're going to make an inscription, make a statue to a God that we don't know. But in all seriousness, I truly believe that they knew something greater was out there.
Yeah.
And so they began to, they were trying to find where that was. And Paul said, hey, look, you declare him as unknown. Let me tell you who he is.
Yeah.
And Pastor made this statement. And it was such a powerful statement, again, that resonated. He said, you know what, when you come in contact with the unknown God, he will begin to change everything you do know.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Paul declared to them. That's exactly what happened. And at Athens, there was a major outpouring of revival of the experience of God as a result of what occurred.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen without preparation.
No.
Revival will never happen without preparation.
So there's in revival, there's always there's 3 points to revival. 1, it's unexplainable. 2, there's going to be unexplainable things, good and bad, happen. And 3, it's going to be more than what you can handle. So I always and I've witnessed this firsthand, and it changed the way I think about God. It changed the way I think about church. It informs my very being. When we start talking about revival, my mind goes to the day in, the day out.
So it doesn't automatically go to 7 nights a week.
Oh, man.
Till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and getting up and going work in the farm the next morning.
No.
That's not what we mean.
I mean,
right?
it could. It's just
old
depends.
schools, right?
Yeah, that's that's a revival of sort. I would love to, honestly. It'd be so cool to have, and I want to say this, revival like that, but every night it's a different congregation. It's not the same people.
Interesting.
That I think that would be
mind-blowing for sure. Yeah.
Just anyway.
Sorry.
But
I
in
got you
that
off on
day
that rabbit
to day,
trail.
in that day to day of revival, you see, or when in the day to day of living, we get to. My mind goes to the disciples. They're fishing. They fished all night. They were doing what they knew to do, and then Jesus said, they didn't catch anything. That's pretty normal, right? We just do stuff.
It's like me every time I go hunting.
We do our best, and we have to wait on Jesus to show up. But when he's shown up, he shows out, and he says, "Cast your nets on the other side," and they catch more fish than their boats can handle, and more than their nets can handle. In my takeaway from that is, when we start praying for revival, we should start preparing for it. We need to build stronger nets, bigger boats.
Can you say that? Say that one more time, and just in case, for the people in the back that may not have got that. Yeah, go ahead and say that one more time.
When we start praying for revival, we should start preparing for it. We need to build bigger nets and bigger boats. And that is very practical. That is our systems, our processes, that's our buildings, that's our mindset. That's our expectation. That's our prayer life. That's our consecration. Yep. Because then those other things, those demons, what was the word you were just using? I'm so sorry there. The things that come against you, the resistance, that's going to come out, and we have to be at a point to be able to stand up to that. God will not give us revival unless we're prepared for it, or He will, and it will go right through our fingers.
Yeah, and I, my family and I, we pastored a church not too far from here for about 5 years, and we had this moment, where we had been prepping, we had been doing a lot of things, what I thought was fully prepared for it, and what ended up happening is, man, we had, in the space of about 6 weeks, we had over 100 people.
Wow.
That we interacted with via block party, via fireworks tent, et cetera. Over 100 people that asked for a Bible study.
Yeah.
Guess what? We were not prepared. We were not equipped. We were not ready.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is an opportunity for a church that was, pushing 15 to 20 people on average.
Yeah.
An opportunity to have an astronomical impact in our community. It went exactly like you said. It went straight through our hands.
Yeah.
Because we weren't prepared.
Yeah.
And I made a promise to myself. I made a promise to God that if that was ever an opportunity again, we would do all the training necessary to make sure that did not happen.
The tilling of the ground, the preparing of ourselves. It's not the fun part of revival, but I think that's the most necessary part of revival that we can do. All right. So then that gets us to, where does revival come from? Pastor spent a lot of time in, or some time in Numbers, chapter 17. He talked about Aaron's staff that budded. Honestly, it's a wild story there.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with it, they were looking. Why Aaron?
Yeah, why was he the one chosen?
Yeah. Why this? And God said, "Okay, that's fine. You do what you want to do there." And He had them bring a rod from every tribe, and He said, "Let's lock them away. And the one that buds, you'll know that God has His way." So I don't know if you guys have ever seen a rod. Rods they're not green.
Nope.
They're dried out. They're solid. There's no life in them.
No, I mean, you can take some life out of people's heads by making them bleed.
That's about it.
That's about the only value.
It's like a baseball bat. Okay, like just think of a wooden baseball. There's no life in that, and then God makes it bud. That's where revival is. It's not in ourselves. It's not. I love our preparation. I'm that very practically, but it's in what God blesses.
There's something to look at with this. Aaron had to prepare the rod.
Yeah.
He had to, he pulled from, in order for all these rods, that they came from all the different houses, all the different tribes, groups of people, et cetera. They all came there. Somebody had to prepare those rods.
Yeah.
And then what happened is when they prepared the rod and they made it available, God did what God does.
Yeah.
And it wasn't within the laws of nature.
Oh, no.
It was not within the laws of nature.
That's the unexplainable.
There is, God operates the way he does based upon our preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So he looks at our prayer. He looks at our preparation. He says, okay, they've done this part.
Yeah.
Now let me do things my way. And guess what? God created the laws of nature.
He is not limited to them.
He created what exists. No. And so he can rewrite the rules anytime he wants to on natural processes. And that's what he does when revival, when it doesn't seem explainable. If I can just hit on this real quick, Pastor brought up near the end of his message that Sunday, we had close to 100 people in service with us. And, he said, look, 4 years ago, a tornado took out our facility. Mm-hmm. And the group that was there Sunday would not have fit. Mm-mm. And we're looking at what God does and God's revival. And we're looking at, okay, naturally this is the progression. But God says, you know what? I'm going to send something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm going to break the laws of nature. Yeah. I'm going to control nature. And now here we sit, blessed beyond measure, opportunity beyond opportunity to be an impact in our communities. And influence those that directly correlate with us. It's just we sit there and we look and say, okay, God's example through Aaron's rod budding is a perfect example of we prepare, we pray, we give God what we have, and then God does the supernatural, not the unnatural, but the supernatural, breaks the laws that we exist or we think God should work in, and just blows our minds in the process.
Yeah, man, revival. I'm ready for it, aren't you?
Man, it was such an incredible presence of God in the room Sunday. Just excited for where God's taking me and my family and taking our church and everything that God's working and God's moving. Be prepared. Be on the lookout. There's amazing things happening in Chattanooga, CAC, et cetera.
I want to say, I want a disclaimer here. I believe we should prepare. We should be ready, but God will always blow our minds. Always. So be ready for God to blow your mind. Yeah.
Surrender, prepare, pray.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today for another episode of Footnotes. I know that this has been a blast for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So glad for joining in with us. Hope you have a great week.